For over a decade, apps have been the center of everything. If you wanted to do something on your phone, order food, send money, book a ride, watch a video, you opened an app. Every company fought for a spot on your home screen. Entire business models were built around downloads, engagement, and time spent inside these digital boxes. Apps weren't just tools, they were the gateway to the entire internet. But quietly, that model is starting to break. Not all at once. Not in a way that's obvious yet. But beneath the surface, a new trend is emerging. One that could slowly replace apps altogether. And most people don't even realize it's already happening. The shift starts with a simple problem. Apps are becoming too much. Too many downloads, too many accounts, too many updates, too many notifications. The average user doesn't just have a few apps anymore. They have dozens, sometimes hundreds, and most of them are rarely used. This creates friction. Instead of making things easier, apps are starting to feel like a layer you have to manage. You don't just do something, you have to remember which app to open, log in, navigate menus, and complete the task. It's not seamless anymore. And that's exactly what this new trend is trying to fix. The replacement isn't a single technology, it's a shift towards something more fluid, something that removes the need to open apps at all. It's being driven by three major forces happening at the same time. The first is AI assistance, not the basic voice assistants people are used to, but more advanced systems that can actually take actions on your behalf. Instead of opening a food delivery app, browsing options, and placing an order, you simply ask for what you want. The assistant handles the rest. It chooses the service, places the order, tracks it, and updates you. No app, no interface. Just the result. This might sound like a small change, but it fundamentally alters how software is used. The focus shifts from interacting with an app to completing a task. And once that shift happens, the app itself becomes less important. The second force is integration. Companies are starting to connect their services more deeply across platforms. Instead of existing as isolated apps, services are being embedded into operating systems, messaging platforms, and even other services. You can already see early versions of this. Booking a ride directly from a map, ordering food through a chat interface, making payments inside a message. These actions don't feel like you're using an app. They feel like features built into whatever you're already doing. And that's the direction things are moving, from standalone apps to integrated experiences. The third force is the rise of what's often called ambient computing. This is where technology fades into the background. Devices become less about screens and more about presence. Smart systems anticipate needs, respond to context, and operate without constant input. In that environment, the idea of opening an app starts to feel outdated, because the system already knows what you're trying to do, and it just does it. Put these three forces together, and you get a very different model. Instead of dozens of apps competing for attention, you have a smaller number of intelligent layers handling everything. You don't go to the software comes to you. And this is where things get interesting, because if apps disappear, the entire structure of the tech industry changes. Right now, companies compete for downloads, screen time, and user engagement. But in a world without apps, those metrics become less relevant. The competition shifts to something else. Access. Who controls the interface that users interact with? If an AI assistant is choosing which service to use, then the companies behind those services are no longer competing directly with the user. They're competing to be selected by the system. That's a completely different game. It's less visible, but potentially more intense. There's also the issue of control. In the app-based model, users make the choices. They decide which app to open, which service to use, which option to select. In a post-app model, some of those decisions are delegated. The system decides what's best based on data, preferences, and algorithms. That can make things faster and more convenient. But it also raises questions. How are those decisions made? What factors are prioritized? Which companies get favored? These aren't just technical questions, they're strategic ones. Because whoever controls that decision-making layer has enormous influence. And that's why big tech companies are investing so heavily in this space. They're not just building better apps anymore. They're building systems that replace the need for apps. You can see it in how operating systems are evolving. More built-in features, more automation, more intelligence at the core level. The goal is to reduce the number of steps between intention and action, and eventually remove those steps entirely. There's also a business shift happening alongside this. Apps created clear boundaries. You knew where one service ended and another began. In the new model, those boundaries blur. Services become interchangeable. What matters is not the interface, but the outcome. That makes differentiation harder. But it also creates new opportunities. Companies that can integrate well, provide reliable services, and adapt to being part of a larger system will thrive. Those that rely heavily on controlling their own app experience may struggle, because that control is slowly being taken away. But this transition won't happen overnight. Apps aren't disappearing tomorrow. They're still deeply embedded in how technology works today. What's happening instead is a gradual shift. First, apps become less central, then they become optional. And eventually, for many tasks, they become invisible. You still use the service. You just don't open an app to do it. And when that happens, the way people think about technology changes. It becomes less about tools and more about outcomes. Less about navigation and more about intent. You don't think, which app should I use? You think, what do I want to do? And the system takes care of the rest. That's the trend that's quietly replacing apps, not by removing them entirely, but by making them irrelevant to the user experience. Because in the next phase of technology, the best interface might be no interface at all.